Hey everyone, Stacey Dooley here. And let's be real, when we think of Latin America, it's hard not to picture those images we see on the news. Gangs, violence, drugs. These images are so pervasive that they almost become synonymous with the region in our minds. It's like something out of a movie, right? The dramatic chases, the intense shootouts, the gritty urban landscapes. But unlike a movie, there's no director yelling cut to end the scene. But for millions of people across this vibrant continent, this isn't just a scene from a film. It's their daily reality, a constant backdrop to their lives. Their reality. They wake up to it, they navigate through it, and they go to bed with it still looming over them. From the favelas of Rio to the bustling streets of Mexico City, the presence of organized crime casts a long dark shadow. It's a shadow that affects every aspect of life, from the economy to the social fabric of these communities. We're talking powerful drug cartels, ruthless street gangs, all fighting for control, power, and money. These groups are not just local thugs, they are sophisticated organizations with international reach and influence. But it's not just about the violence. It's about the pervasive fear that grips entire communities, the way it seeps into every corner of life, making people feel unsafe even in their own homes. It's about the fear that grips communities, the way it corrupts institutions, and the feeling that there's no escape. Corruption is rampant, and trust in public institutions is at an all-time low. So how did we get here? How did these beautiful, culturally rich countries become synonymous with crime and violence? What's fueled the rise of these criminal empires? Is it just about drugs? Or are there deeper, more complex factors at play? Trust me, it's a whole lot more complicated than what you see on TV. The news often simplifies the narrative, focusing on the most sensational aspects without delving into the underlying causes. Over the next few sections, we're going to dive deep into the heart of this issue, exploring the history, the economics, and the social factors that have created this perfect storm. We'll look at how historical events have shaped the present, how economic disparities fuel the cycle of crime, and how social dynamics play a crucial role. Get ready to learn, guys, because this is a story the world needs to hear. It's a story of resilience, of communities fighting back, and of the human spirit's incredible capacity to endure and hope for a better future. So stay tuned, because we're just getting started. To really get this, we need to rewind a bit. Let's take a journey back through time, peeling back the layers of history to understand the roots of rebellion in Latin America. See, Latin America's history is a wild ride of colonization, revolutions, and dictatorships. It's a story filled with dramatic twists and turns, where the people have constantly fought for their freedom and identity. Think about it. Centuries of being ruled by European powers, followed by brutal fights for independence, only to be replaced by corrupt governments and military regimes. The struggle for autonomy and justice has been relentless, with each era bringing its own set of challenges and oppressors. These power struggles left deep scars. The land itself bears the marks of conflict, with ruins and scarred landscapes serving as silent witnesses to the battles fought and lives lost. They created massive inequality, with a tiny elite holding all the wealth and power, while the majority struggled to survive. Sound familiar? This stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots is a recurring theme, one that has fueled resentment and unrest for generations. It's a recipe for resentment, instability, and a whole lot of anger. When people are pushed to the brink, when their basic needs are ignored and their voices silenced, the result is inevitable: protests, riots, and a simmering anger that can explode at any moment. And guess what thrives in chaos? Yep, organized crime. In the absence of stable governance and law enforcement, criminal organizations find fertile ground to grow and expand their influence. They stepped in to fill the void, offering protection, opportunities, and a way out of poverty. For many in these marginalized communities, the gangs became a necessary evil, providing a semblance of order and security where the state had failed. They became Robin Hood-esque figures for some, even if their methods were anything but heroic. These gang leaders were seen as protectors and benefactors, despite their violent and criminal activities. This historical legacy of inequality and instability is like the foundation upon which the whole gangster-ridden structure is built. The roots of organized crime in Latin America are deeply intertwined with the region's turbulent past. It's a vicious cycle that's been spinning for generations. Each new generation inherits the struggles and scars of the past, perpetuating a cycle of violence, poverty, and rebellion. Understanding this history is crucial to addressing the present challenges and working towards a more just and equitable future. Let's be honest, poverty is a breeding ground for crime. Anywhere in the world, it's a harsh reality that many face daily, and it's not just a statistic, it's a lived experience. In these neighborhoods, children grow up too fast, exposed to the harshness of life from a tender age. They see their parents struggle to make ends meet, often working multiple jobs just to put food on the table. The cycle of poverty is relentless, and breaking free from it seems like an impossible dream. But in Latin America, it's like an open wound that just won't heal. The urban slums are a stark contrast to the bustling cities nearby. These rundown neighborhoods are filled with dilapidated buildings, lack of basic amenities, and a sense of hopelessness that permeates the air. The infrastructure is crumbling and the streets are often unsafe, especially at night. It's a place where dreams go to die and survival becomes the primary goal. Despite its incredible natural resources and potential, millions are trapped in poverty. Latin America is rich in minerals, oil, and fertile land, yet the wealth generated from these resources rarely trickles down to those who need it most. The rural areas in particular are hit hard. Farmers struggle to make a living and many are forced to migrate to cities in search of better opportunities, only to find themselves in equally dire situations. The potential for prosperity is there, but it's locked away, inaccessible to the masses. The gap between the rich and the poor is wider than a telenovela plot twist. In some places, you can see luxury high-rises casting shadows over shantytowns. The disparity is glaring and inescapable. The wealthy live in gated communities with all the modern conveniences, while just a stone's throw away, families struggle to find clean water and electricity. This stark contrast fuels resentment and a sense of injustice among the poor, who feel abandoned by society. Imagine this. You're young, stuck in a slum with no education, no job prospects, and a family to feed. Your dreams are limited to what you see around you, and what you see is bleak. The schools are underfunded, and the quality of education is poor. Many children drop out early to help support their families, perpetuating the cycle of poverty. The lack of opportunities is stifling, and the future seems like a dark tunnel with no light at the end. Suddenly, a gang offers you a way to make quick cash, gain respect, and escape the daily grind. They promise you a sense of belonging, a family that looks out for you. It's a tempting offer, especially when the alternative is a life of unending struggle. The gangs are well organized and have a strong presence in these communities. They offer protection and a way out, albeit a dangerous one. Tempting, right? It's a no-brainer for many. When faced with the choice between a life of poverty and a chance at something more, even if it comes with risks, the decision seems clear. The allure of quick money and respect is hard to resist, especially for young people who feel invisible and powerless. Joining a gang offers them a way to assert their identity and gain a sense of control over their lives. They see gangs and cartels as their only shot at a better life, even if it comes with huge risks. The promise of a better future, no matter how uncertain, is enough to draw them in. They dream of escaping the slums, of providing for their families, and of living a life of dignity. But the reality is often far from the dream. The risks are enormous, and the consequences can be deadly. Yet, for many, it's a risk worth taking. They're not necessarily bad people, they're just dealt a bad hand. Circumstances have pushed them into a corner, and they're doing what they can to survive. It's easy to judge from the outside, but when you look closer, you see the humanity in their choices. They are sons, daughters, brothers and sisters, trying to make the best of a bad situation. They dream of a better life, just like anyone else. And trust me, when you're playing with a deck stacked against you, you take any chance you can get. Desperation drives people to make choices they wouldn't otherwise consider. It's a fight for survival, and in such a fight the lines between right and wrong often blur. The hope is that one day, the opportunities will be more plentiful and the choices won't be so stark. Until then, they continue to navigate a world that offers them few options and even fewer chances for a better life. Here's the thing, gangs and cartels couldn't thrive without help. And who's lending a hand? Often it's the very people who are supposed to protect us. Corrupt politicians, police officers, and government officials. Think of it like this. It's one big messed up family business. Cartels bribe officials to turn a blind eye, to tip them off about raids, even to actively participate in their operations. It's like a real-life episode of Narcos, but way less glamorous. This corruption runs deep, like a nasty infection. It weakens institutions, erodes trust in authority, and makes it almost impossible to fight back. Why? Because the good guys are outnumbered, outgunned, and often on the take. It's a recipe for disaster, and sadly it's everyday life in many parts of Latin America. Alright, let's get specific. Mexico, land of tacos, tequila, and unfortunately some of the most powerful drug cartels in the world. We're talking about groups like Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, and Los Zetas, names that send shivers down your spine. These guys are ruthless. They control vast territories, traffic billions of dollars worth of drugs into the US, and leave a trail of violence and bloodshed in their wake. They bribe officials, threaten journalists, and terrorize entire communities. It's a war zone out there. Remember the 43 missing students from Ayotzinapa in 2014? That's the brutal reality of cartel power. It's a stark reminder of what happens when organized crime infiltrates every level of society. Next stop, Colombia. This beautiful country has been ravaged by decades of conflict, fueled by drug trafficking, leftist guerrillas like the FARC and right-wing paramilitaries. It's a complex web of violence and corruption that's torn the country apart. We all know the story of Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel. He's gone, but the legacy of cocaine trafficking continues to haunt Colombia. New cartels have emerged, fighting for control of the drug trade, displacing communities and fueling violence. Despite progress in recent years, peace remains fragile. The Colombian government faces an uphill battle against these powerful groups, and the human cost of this conflict is immeasurable.